Hi, I'm Ted Oakley, managing partner here at Oxbow in Austin, Texas, and I have with me today one of my favorite, if not my favorite person in people that represent other people to sell their companies, and that's Terry Monroe. Terry, glad to have you.
Thank you, Ted. Great to be here with you.
And one of the things that I would recommend to people today, and I want to show you this, is Terry's new book coming out, which is Hidden Wealth. I started working with business owners that sold companies in 1984. And I will tell you, this book right here will tell you everything you need to know about what's going on before you sell the company and during selling the company. And Terry has some great advice in here that he's going to share with us today. But I love, Terry, I love the detail you went into. I agree with everything you talked about in this book. I'm sure, how many years you've done this?
Oh, about 30 some years, almost 35 years. I've messed up more doggone things than you can think of. And this is real life experience that I share with these people, Ted. It's not academia or anything like that. It's the real deal. And it's this experience to try to keep these people so that they don't do the same thing that I and other people have done. You know, the best way to learn is through people's mistakes, preferably other people's, instead of your own.
And you know, Terry, I think you would agree with me, the times have changed. We go through different periods where there's different kinds of consolidations going on, different industries, but the business owner mentality before selling has never changed. Would you agree with that?
I would totally agree with that. And what most people don't understand, Ted, it is so emotional, it is so hard for the people, and that's why one of the biggest reasons I wrote this book, because I've owned 40 different businesses. So I have been a seller. I have actually walked in their shoes multiple times. I can empathize with these people. And they don't realize, you know, what they're going to get themselves into. You know, buying is easy. You know, all you gotta do is write a check. You can overpay for anything. But selling, I always tell people, you know, businesses and relationships are the same. They're both easy to get into and hard to get out of.
That is so true. So let me ask you, I'll start with a question I had and for you. But if someone is considering selling their business, and everybody thinks about it a little bit. I've owned businesses too. Everybody thinks about it a little bit. But if they're really considering selling their businesses, what do you think are the top 3 questions they should ask themselves?
Going back, as I just mentioned, it's mostly emotional. And so the first reason is, you know, am I sure I want to sell? Do I really want to? Because you hear people say, oh, boy, if I got such and such money, I'm out of here. But they need to go in a dark room. I tell them, go in a dark room, sit down and talk to yourself and say, do I really want to sell? Because you can't do this and be half pregnant. You got to make sure that you are all in. That would be the first thing I would tell somebody.
And you have a number of examples in the book of people that got to the altar and couldn't pull the trigger.
Oh, well, one of them, and I don't want to get carried out too far, is the rule of 72. And you're a finance individual. You know the rule of 72 in finance.
Oh, yeah.
But in business, we claim that people are generally, if they're 72 years or older, they generally die with the business because the business becomes their identity. It's just a little rule of thumb. It doesn't always happen, but they just want to stick with it too long.
Yeah,
too long.
Yeah, and they miss the window. But go ahead. What's your number 2?
Why am I selling?
Yeah.
Is it for money? Is it for I don't have a succession plan? But the number 1 reason people sell, they don't understand this, is burnout. I've had grown men sitting in front of me that almost in tears, and they say, Terry, I'm making more money than I ever made in my life, but I've got to get out of this. I am just tired, done, ready to close the chapter. Boom. And not unusual at all.
So, in those people you call on, is there a way that you can tell, is there anything they do that you say, you know, I can sort of tell this person is considering selling, but they really don't want to? I mean, I would assume it's something where they're talking to you and they're talking about selling, and the next day you talk to them and it's like you never talked to them.
Absolutely. And that's the other question I ask them is, what are you going to do afterwards? I'm real nonchalant about this. What are you going to do afterwards? If they say, well, I don't know, then they're really not totally committed. Most people know I'm going to be spending. I've got a gentleman right now. He says, I've already bought a house in Florida. I'm building a pool. My grandkids are coming down. He's got a plan. So he's committed.
But I love your answer in the book, which I've always told people to do this, not in the same way you did in the book. You go take that 1 month off and go do whatever you're going to do, or 2 months, whatever, just go experience it.
Yeah, take a trial run. You think you want to live in the Caribbean and on a tropical island or in Florida and play golf. A lot of guys, I started out years ago in Florida, and these guys would sell their business, come down, they think they're going to play golf forever. After 6 months, they would come to me and say, I've got to buy a business or my wife's going to kill me. They can only fish and play golf so long. So they need to take a test run.
Well, and a lot of them, I think you would agree, their ego's in it, and then once you get blown up on your ego and you don't have anywhere else to stroke it, then you're miserable, really.
Oh, we are so much alike on this. Their ego, they're used to telling people what to do all the time, when to do it, and then all of a sudden, they're out of it. That's why it became their identity. Now they don't have anybody stroke their ego, so they're on their own. It's a life-changing experience. And
on our side of the business, it's one of the real reason that they go out and buy things they shouldn't buy, because they're trying to restart the ego thing. So they buy other companies they know nothing about, and of course lose a lot of money.
I loved in your book $20 million and broke. It was just right on. The ego says, I was very successful at this business. I sold it, I got a lot of money, so therefore I must be smart. And then they get into other ventures, and it just keeps going until they finally just, puts it all away. But they got to get back in that box.
So let me ask you, moving on, what are 3 mistakes you think business owner makes when they're selling the company, when they're actually selling it?
That's one of the biggest reasons I wrote this. It's sort of, the book basically could be called The Wedding Planner, because I'm trying to get the bride ready for the wedding. You can still have a marriage, but to have a wedding, and most people are not prepared. I don't care. I work with publicly traded companies. I work with private individuals. They're not prepared, and they have no clue how long this is going to take. One gentleman, I worked with him for a year, and at the end of the year, he says, I don't know if I want to sell. You got me making more money now than I started out. They're not prepared, and they don't know how long it's going to take. Like I mentioned earlier, it's easy to buy, but to get out of this, there's a process.
And most of them don't want to take the time to get everything in shape, I might say, to really make it, to get it boxed up and a ribbon on it and everything and look good. Wouldn't you say they just don't want to hassle it?
No, they think it should be easy, like selling a house or something like that. And this is a business is a living, breathing entity, and it's constantly changing. So we've got to get our hands around it. We've got to get it all in this boxes and all tied up. So that, remember, as a business owner, you know everything about that business. You have lived it from the time you started or the time you bought it. Buyer knows nothing. And so it's a lot of work to get this thing ready, if you want to do it right.
Any other mistakes when they're selling the business in the midst of the sale?
Oh, yes. Most men, and I'm picking on men here, that they procrastinate. They like to ride the horse too long, as I always say. Life is all about pain or pleasure. And this is what I run into. Some of these guys I've worked with 5-7 years. And so if we do things for pleasure or to avoid pain. So if there's no real pain that's happening, it's like, well, I'll just wait till later. I'll do it later. And they never come around to getting it done. And then things happen. Then it gets bad. Then my pet peeve, my pet peeve is most people know what their real estate's worth, what their home's worth, their buildings are worth, anything like that. Maybe the vehicles, they know what they're worth. But their largest financial asset they have generally is their business. They have no idea what it's worth. And yet they're saying, I want to sell. And so they have I've done so many times where I was consulting for one of my other clients, and he calls me and he says, I'm thinking about buying this business over here. And I said, that's great, I'll help you out. I said, give me this, this, and this. And I said, it's worth X number of millions of dollars. He calls me back and said, I bought it for $5 million less than what you said, Terry. They don't take the time to figure out what it's worth. That's my number one pet peeve. Find out what you're dealing with.
Yeah, yeah. Do you, of all the people that come to you to sell the businesses in the midst of the sale, how many of those fall through as a percentage?
Not that many, because I've done this so long that I can tell real quick. As I always say, I like to wash people out. That goes both ways. If they're really serious, then we'll just have a nice chat. And there's a lot of people I turn away and tell them, you're really not ready. Why don't you run it for a few more years and get yourself ready? Do this and this and this. That's why I consult with people, just to get them ready. Because I can't sell everybody's. I consult with a bunch of them to help them out. So if I can get them in the right path, they'll get it sold.
Do you ever talk with them about situations? You mentioned this in the book 3 or 4 different times, by the way. Again, Hidden Wealth, great book. You need to read it. I've read it twice. Do you mention to them sometimes, because a lot of these businesses have children in the business, and that makes it a little more sticky when they sell it.
It does, and I respect the people that will have a family meeting before they do anything, and they sit down with the kids and they say, look, this is the business. Are any of you children interested in taking the business and running with it? And Ted, you would be shocked at the number of clients that tell me the kids say, we don't want to work that hard. And so they clear it with the kids. And now what we're seeing happening, which I think is a great idea, the business was mom and dad's dream. It was their business. It wasn't the kids. And so we'll go ahead and sell the business, and then they can start a family office. They can invest their money. They can go after what they do best. It's a better deal for legacy.
So another sticky topic when you're interviewing somebody who wants to sell a company, and they've decided, or they think they're deciding, to have one of their offspring take over the company, and you know for sure that that person, female or male, is incapable of running that company, and they're probably going to run it into the ground. What do you do?
Well,
it's hard to have with them because you're talking about their offspring.
Nobody likes to hear they have an ugly baby.
Yeah, that's right.
Trying to tell them some scenarios that they may be better off going on a different avenue. It's tough. It's tough love. I've got some clients I really respect. 4th generation business. He could tell that his son really wasn't up to it. And we took it and sold it. It was a very good business. And now the boy's got money and he's out doing his thing. Like I said, it was mom and dad's love. It isn't theirs. And just because you're the oldest child doesn't mean that you're the most capable one either.
Yeah, hard to get it to that 3rd and 4th generation.
Oh,
not many make it.
No, they don't.
Yeah, and I've worked with a lot of business owners, and it's very hard to get that same drive instilled in the 2nd and 3rd generation that they had in the first one.
Very difficult.
When mistakes that people make when also in selling a company, I'm sure you ran into this, where they think the company is worth more than it really is worth. They go the other way.
It's a constant. Valuation, it always comes down to valuation. I've seen it go from one extreme to the other. I just seen one recently, the guy wanted $15 million, and it come to find out that's because there was 5 kids. They all wanted $3 million. And the business wasn't worth $15 million. It's funny how they do that. They haven't figured it in their head. Or I have X number of dollar debt, and so I want to walk away with this much, so they come up with their own numbers. That's part of the dismal D's. That's called delusional.
Right.
And so we have to give them a shot of reality. And what it is what it is.
The other thing I was going to ask you, and I'm sure you have various methods, and everyone who's watching this, these business owners that are watching, all of you out there that are watching this, and you haven't valued your company, but as you know, you have the income approach, the asset approach, various approaches. And I think what happens to a lot of them is they overplay what that means to somebody else in buying one of those on that basis. Don't you think that's what happens with a lot of them?
On the buying
Yeah,
side?
no, on the sell side, they think it's worth more because they've been in it and they know what the assets can produce or what the pre-tax is. But
Right.
not the buyers are going to always be on the other side of that saying, well, we may not do as well, so we're going to bid you a little lower on it.
Well, what the seller doesn't realize, the buyer is buying a cash flow stream.
Exactly.
That's what they're buying. And even I've seen, and they just had this a month ago, the seller spent a lot of money on his equipment and his vehicles, the asset side of it. So therefore, and they had a personal attachment to that. But it's still down to the cash flow stream. Those assets help make that cash flow stream. And so that's what we have to educate people on. It's about the cash flow stream. And that's what you're going to buy.
So I know you know how I feel about this next question, but I will ask you, what do you think about today's environment as far as selling? And I'm speaking primarily about the multiples that are being paid on pre-tax now for selling your company. What do you think about that?
I've said this many, many, many times. This today is, you've never had a better time to be a buyer. And it's never, ever been a better time to be a seller.
Yeah. Because
of this cheap money. And when you have cheap money, you have higher valuations. It's never going to get this cheap again in my lifetime. And if you're even considering it, now's the time, because you're not going to ever get this much again.
Well, and that's where I come from on it. I think people, if they pass the window now, and you get out maybe 5 years or later, that's one of the problems. And so if they're reading your book, they need to take all that into consideration here, because this is a pretty good window right here for selling your business. I see multiples now that I never thought I would ever see.
Same here. And people have to realize everything cycles. Everything in life cycles.
Right.
And so this is going to cycle too. And they don't want to be sitting around and saying woulda, coulda, shoulda. People say, and I'll finish this one comment, they say, well, I'm not ready. I'm not old enough, or I'm not ready in my life. And what I always share with them, look, the market doesn't care about you. They don't care what you're doing. And the market's what it is, and the market's telling you it's on the high end right now. Go ahead and wait. Nobody's stopping you. You can write it down.
So let me ask you, because we feel like on the money side that times are really precarious right now, that it will really be tough the next year or two from the money side of our business. But on the business side and the sales side, would you think that would entice or should entice a seller to really take a look at that by asking this question? Do you really want to go across that river today or across that valley for the next 2 or 3 years, because it may not be worth it?
Oh, absolutely, Ted. They should be asking themselves that. As I always say, you need to go into a dark room and have a conversation with yourself and ask yourself, what is my upside if I keep doing what I'm doing? If there's not, am I just going to be trading dollars later on? If I can take more off the table now than I ever could in my life, why wouldn't I do it? It is going to get very precarious. I agree with you on that. The next year or so, I mean, prior to the pandemic, I couldn't spell pandemic, and we went through one. And what's next?
Yeah, it's a very, very unusual time. And I think from a business owner standpoint, they have to think about if they were planning on selling even in the next 7 or 8 years, yes, with knowing what's ahead of us for probably the next 3 or 4 years, and maybe a really tough tax environment. They may want to really think about that right now in terms of selling it.
I didn't want to bring up the tax-wise, but I've always said my goal is to educate people, help people to get as much money in their pocket as they can.
Right.
And so we have to study taxes too. And it doesn't look real good going forward, possibly. It's possible.
Yeah, that's the way we feel about it for sure. So, so tell us this, and I'm going to, I'm kind of winding up here in one respect, but tell us on the book Hidden Wealth. Tell us a little bit about it, when it's available, who could get it, would you send a copy? I mean, you know, I'd like to know if somebody out there wants a copy of this. How do we do that?
It's available at terrymonroe.com. It'll be available on Amazon, and we'll have another special website landing page that they'll be able to go to too. That'll be on this video that we're going to share with people. Yeah. That they'll be able to pick it up.
Well, let me say from experience, and I have a lot of it in this area, that Terry covered every aspect of this, and I would highly recommend you to read the book. But I would also highly recommend you to talk to Terry if you want to do. And on that other account, we work with a number of people that represent buyers and sellers. And I'll tell you, Terry is one of the most stand-up people that we've ever worked with. I have to give you a kudo there for sure, Terry.
Well, thank you, Ted. Yeah. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you.
And listen, thanks for being with us today. And for all you buyers and sellers out there, certainly give Terry a call and read his book, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Ted.
Yeah, thanks.